All right, everybody. Today, our episode is about the two ways that we meet pain through enduring and indulging. I'm Brett, and I've got Soul here today. And today's an exciting episode, I think. There's a lot to talk about, right?
Always.
So, I wanted to talk about maybe just kick off the episode about maybe what the purpose of pain is, if you're willing to jump to that and see if we can just talk about why pain and pleasure exist in this world and what is their place.
Right, right. I love that we're starting with this because it was something that I wish we had talked about a little bit more last time. And this is going to be a central theme here in the surplus of suffering, right? We have all this suffering, but what is the point of it? Like, does it even have a point? Is it just a part of life? Well, we think it is a part of life, but we also think that it has a specific purpose for us. And going back to everything that I was talking about, my learnings of spiritual growth through the book, the Bhagavad Gita. In that book, it, Krishna is saying to Arjuna that the purpose of suffering is for our spiritual growth, right? Suffering is part of what helps us understand that everything is transient, right? And that's why last time I brought up the whole like not being attached to the outcomes of your work. Well, at the end of the day, both like Buddhism, um, the Bhagavad Gita, these ancient spiritual texts, they're all saying that kind of the solution to this suffering is, or the reason why it happens is our attachments. Like that is the root of suffering is due to our attachments and our experiences in the physical realm. Like it is due to our attachments to our sense experience that we experience either pain or pleasure. And the
Yeah,
purpose at the end of the day is our spiritual growth.
yeah, and those things are inevitable. Like, we're not we're not avoiding those. We need to embrace them and understand. Yeah, the way that they're transient. Uh, it reminds me of the candle quote I brought up last episode. Just the darkness defines the light, the pain defines the pleasure in some ways, and I have some thoughts about pain, and the thoughts. I'm not the most empathetic person, but I do practice empathy, and I've noticed, when I see others in pain, it enables, it sort of unlocks, it creates empathy, it provides the opportunity for one to feel empathy for someone else, and when people feel empathy for each other, they make connections, they grow closer, they become friends, they depend on each other the way humans should or depend on each other.
That's right. That's right. Because everyone is struggling with something, and we all need help from one another. That no man, no person is an island, right? We
Yes,
are social creatures, and in the modern era, we've become more and more isolated because of the social structures. And
yeah,
I believe that that's
technology.
part of the rise in depression in the modern world and higher rates of schizophrenia and different
That's right. There are
yeah.
all sorts of things encouraging isolation, technology enabling you to feel like you're socializing, feel like you're being friends with people, although the human connection is it's missing something, and likes and hearts and a comment on a post doesn't quite do the same thing as a vulnerable conversation late at night when there's tears flowing. These kinds of times, these too many tears are happening in the dark alone. That's part of the reason why we're doing this in the first place. And got to mention pleasure in this too, because pleasure, when I think of pleasure and the pain, it's like, well, coping. We have to cope in some way, shape, or form, and that's just true. No one doesn't cope. And hopefully the coping mechanisms you have are healthy ones, and that's not always the case. Maybe they're neutral. It's you don't want to think too hard about it, but at the same time, you want to be aware. I think awareness is a big theme of this podcast today, because the awareness of your coping mechanisms, are they self-destructive? Are they things that are helping me grow, or are they sustainable, or are they helping somebody else? Like whether it be music, that's a great example. Like how I don't feel bad when I play the piano, when I sing. It's like, but if I'm using substances, or if I'm doing self-destructive behavior where I'm like my body starts to hurt because I'm playing too many video games or I'm not drinking water, all these things, at what cost are these coping mechanisms helping you? Because it all comes down to a trade-off. Is there
Hmm.
sacrifices you're making to cope, or are you coping and it's actually overall helping everybody, include you and the people around you?
That's right. I love that you brought awareness, because these are the two things that we can use, right? One of them is, practicing non-attachment to help us with suffering. The other one is bringing awareness to the table, which is what the Buddha is always talking about, right? It's the
Yeah,
Buddha says there's what they refer to as dukkha, which is all the pain and suffering, dissatisfaction, discomfort, and sukha, which refers to happiness, pleasure, and well-being. And while you might think that the absence of dukkha is inherently sukha or pleasure,
yeah,
it's trying to get at something more, like fulfillment and purpose, and that sense of a deeper joy. And and we can only get to that by forming awareness and having awareness of these coping mechanisms that are, guiding our lives through our subconscious. It's the patterns that we learn to cope with,
yeah,
and yeah, without bringing awareness to those things, they're going to run our lives uh, without us even being fully aware. We're gonna what that quote, the Carl Jung quote, is coming to mind of, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate.
yeah. I love that. Yeah, because people call so many things fate, and it is a simpler, easier way. Because sometimes it feels like you're just spinning wheels when you think about these ideas on a deeper level. It's like I'd rather, to some extent, subconsciously, you might just be thinking it was just fate or it was God's plan, and then you're just done thinking about it. But there is more to it. That deeper joy you're talking about, and getting to a place where you're truly content, happy, fulfilled, like fulfillment and purpose being the most elusive of the elements of happiness, in my opinion. Um,
That's
and
right.
and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about um, specifically what happens when you live life in your comfort zone, or when you avoid pain, let's just say. When you avoid pain at all costs, um,
Right.
whether it's for you or people around you, or I think of this puppy I got. I'm gonna keep bringing up this puppy. Might as well for every episode, because it's true. I'm raising a puppy is I'm not a parent, so I can't act like I know what it's like to raise a kid. However, the emotions I feel connected to this puppy are my real emotions. So, and I'm thinking about when the dog is going through something, like they're enduring some kind of displeasure, whether it's a pain. I don't hit her. I mean, we spray her with water sometimes, but like her desire for food, for instance, or not wanting to be in the crate, and they bark and they squeal, and I feel so bad. I just want to give in and let them out of the crate or give them what they want instantly. And I know that that's not the right thing, at least for the dog, if I want to crate train them. And I know it's not the right thing if I want them to be disciplined and wait for their food, for instance. So not giving in to the dog is way harder than I had thought. And so I could see why other people might.
Oh yeah. And like, yes, it is different to raise a dog than to raise a human,
Yeah, way different.
but there's a lot of similarities in the fact that, they are learning from you, right? So everything
Yeah.
that you do, they are taking note and being like, when they do this, this happens. When I do this, this happens. So that's why it's so important to be consistent with those things. Whether you're raising a dog or raising a child, you have to be consistent with the things that you are teaching it, so that it can learn that, they're living in a safe environment when things work a certain way. And then, over time they will learn, and yeah, they are gonna like have a fit and be like, oh, I'm unhappy because I want the thing right now.
Yes.
But it
Right
is
now.
your job to raise them to have patience, to understand that you're not always going to get what you want right when you want it, or that, you have to communicate your desires. Sometimes you have to compromise. Like, all of these things are things you have to teach, um, like by example, right? You can't you can't sometimes give in to them because you feel bad because they're learning that like, oh, if I scream and yell enough, they will let me out of the
Yep.
cage or they will give me the treat.
And I think, yeah, you're so right. And like, we are comparing dogs to people, unfortunately. But the truth is, I identify with so much of what you said. You know, like wanting the thing now, like not wanting to wait, and the inconsistencies. And if you when you do get the thing now, it just makes you expect it. The expectations, the entitlement, there it leads to a lot of problems. And some people out in the audience might know a person or might know some people who grew up that way, and maybe it didn't serve them well, maybe it did, or maybe it's going fine. The point is, we're trying to find that joy, that fulfillment, that peace. So understanding that you don't always get the treat now is important, because when life hits you, you don't just get a treat whenever you want. Because on a scientific level, I have to bring up dopamine because we're talking about pleasure. Dopamine, it's good. I mean, it's related to all the good things that we enjoy very much. However, there are risks associated when you just get as much dopamine as you want all the time on demand. We live in a world of abundance when it comes to things like food. Food is something that rises dopamine. When it comes to video games, something that provides dopamine. Adult content can provide dopamine. So these are all different outlets that feel different. You know, watching TV, they're all different, but they're all doing something in our brain that's similar. It's just, they're raising our dopamine levels, which makes us feel good. A reward system. Reward should typically come as a reward for something that you've done
Yeah.
that's challenging. Sometimes the reward comes first, and that's okay. So, like we were talking about coping, you know, I've addiction is intertwined with this, and I have experience with that and what that can do. But the truth is, if you overload your system with dopamine, treat it like a substance, because there's a tolerance essentially, and your baseline dopamine is a big predictor of your people's motivation. This is backed by science, and I encourage people to look this up. Baseline dopamine levels and what it can do. It is tied to motivation. So if you spike your dopamine so much, you have such a tolerance to it. Doing the little things become really hard. It's just true. All of a sudden the things that don't, like, oh, I don't feel like it. You might not realize what your brain's doing, what the neurochemical react, like the neurology of it all is intertwined with your behaviors and your willingness to do the hard thing.
That's right. That's right. There is um I the neuroscientist and what's his name? Huberman.
Yeah, Andrew Huberman.
Um Andrew Huberman, he was talking about, I can't remember the name of the part of the brain that he talked about, but it was basically the part of the brain that gets bigger and grows for the people that do hard things more often,
Is
right?
it the prefrontal cortex? I really don't want to speak out of turn because I don't want to steer
Yeah,
people wrong.
it's a very
Oh,
specific
oh, okay.
part of the brain that he talks about that grows in people that I guess have a lot of discipline because it's
Oh,
the part of the
yes.
brain that helps you
I
like
have heard about
do
this,
the
yeah.
hard thing that you don't want to do,
And
right?
they've
And it's
identified
like,
that it's bigger in the people who who are more disciplined, who have excelled.
yeah,
There are
because
certain
it's like a
populations.
muscle. That's
Yeah,
right. That's
it's like a
right.
muscle. And I think
So
the more we think about the brain that way, the more it would enable people who want to create change. Because that dopamine thing I was talking about, you can feel like you're just in a pit that's just you can't get out of it. There's no way. You're just there's you lose hope. You lose, and that's I've been there. It's a terrible place to be when you lose hope. Um, I actually have another study to bring up at the end. I want to create a new segment at the end called what does soul think?" And I'm going to bring up a study later, and we'll talk about that. But I want to talk about the costs of avoiding pain, living in your comfort zone. And I'm just going to list a few off, and maybe you, if you have any ideas about them. I'm talking about things like on a chronic level, avoiding adversity and pain, because pain comes in all sizes, or shapes and forms. We got physical, emotional, um, etc. But things like stagnation in our lives, like you're talking about growth. Pain provides growth. So if you don't have the pain, what's the opposite of growth? You would stagnate potentially. Um, being that feeling of unfulfillment, not getting that deeper joy you're talking about, and then the small things becoming more significant, more bothersome, more irritable, and so some people avoid pain because of risk, and the truth is, avoiding risk robs you of the opportunities to build confidence in yourself. The fear of failure isn't worth it. I mean, life is risky. You know what I'm saying? Starting a business
Hmm.
is risky. Taking all these other things, getting out of your comfort zone is risky. Life is so risky. You're not going to make it out alive. That's how
That's
risky
right.
it is. So, and if you think the bill of trying to chase your dreams or chase this endeavor out of your comfort zone is high, the bill for not trying, that could be higher than you might expect. If you're 10 years down the line and you think, why didn't I start that podcast? Why didn't I start
Hmm.
singing and record my music? Why didn't I be vulnerable? Why wasn't I vulnerable with the people I cared about the most? Or why didn't I prioritize my physical health, which we will have an episode on that later? I'm doing Pilates. That's a very humbling experience. 50-year-old women lifting their legs way better than me. But I'm out of my comfort zone when I walk in that class every time. So I just wanted to talk about risk a little bit and how some people want to stay safe all the time. And I encourage people not to feel unsafe, but just be aware.
Right, right. No, I love this. I love this. And the fact that you're bringing up that safety, because that is the reason that we stay in our comfort zone. And we're actually wired to do that.
Yeah.
Like the job of our subconscious is to keep us safe. So, like, once we've done something enough times, even if we're not like fully satisfied, like living like the dream life, we're not like super fulfilled. Our brain is like, hey, we're actually okay, we're safe, this is
Yeah.
consistent. So let's keep it going. Like it just wants more of that, right? And anytime you want to step out of that, it's like, whoa, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So all the anxiety and all those things come up, right? That's where the limit of the comfort zone is. You're at the edge of your comfort zone. That's where your ego or your subconscious, your body is going to be like, oh no, the unknown, potentially unsafe, we could potentially die, let's avoid that risk
Yeah.
and stay in the comfort zone. And that's literally what everyone that's trying to make any changes in their life has to struggle through. You have to get through the barrier of fear of the unknown to be able to get new results in life, right? Because if you want to experience something different, if you want to get different
Yeah.
results, then you have to do something different than what you're doing now. You can't
That
keep
makes
doing the same
sense.
thing and expect something different. That's the definition of insanity, some people say, right?
Yeah, I've heard that too. And I gotta give a shout out. There was a professor I quoted when I was talking about life being risky because it's just a different way of reframing going out of your comfort zone. And I just want to talk about what stagnation could look like in some people because on a physical level, you might be sedentary. You might become sedentary. If you do this for a long time, you might become sedentary. You might be stuck in unhealthy relationship patterns that just feel safe. That feel like if I leave this relationship or these are complicated emotions. You could be socially isolating yourself. All three of those things bad for the soul. Social isolation, I think most of us will agree that it's something we're trying to avoid. And if you might just blink and find yourself in a position where you're socially isolated, you're physically sedentary, and maybe you're in relationships and maybe not intimate relationships, but your friends even. You just and then you find yourself stuck, trapped in a hole deeper than you had anticipated, and now it's harder than ever to get out. So I think the best way to address that is to on a prevention level, kind of how to increase the size of your comfort zone. Because what is the size of the comfort zone? Maybe it's narrow, maybe it's wide. I feel like some of the audience might identify with that if they feel like they know people who get uncomfortable really quick,
Hmm.
and anxiety has to do with it. And it's easy to say I have anxiety or anxiety is on me. It's fate, the way you just said it, and I our minds are powerful. We firmly believe that, and I encourage anyone who is experiencing intense anxiety to accept the medication if they're being prescribed it. I'm not discouraging medication by any means. However, I don't want people to discount any power or control they may have over their own emotions and anxiety. And maybe there's a way you can, um, you know, you can transcend some of those challenges and take control of your mind a little bit more with the help of medication potentially. But I think that's the goal, because as soon as your comfort zone gets wider, I mean, medication helped me do that. It changes your life. It opens up so many doors and opportunities and enables growth.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Like I used to think that maybe, you shouldn't need any medication. You should be able to do everything on your own with your mind, because I did always believe, yeah, our minds are powerful. But I did get to that point where like I use my powerful mind so much in the negative direction
Yeah.
that like the medication just helped me, I guess, rewire all the mental loops that I had ingrained and become the natural pathway to just give me a chance to make some new ones, because it got
Yeah.
really tough to try to change those on my own. So
Gets you out of the
helping
hole.
with, yeah, helping, because I created that brain chemistry.
Yes.
So it was useful to have something counteract that to give me the edge to create a new brain chemistry, and then later not needed anymore. Right? I was able to get
Yeah.
off the medication, and I'm back to balance. I'm back to homeostasis.
I love that. Yeah, because I think, like I said, when people say I have anxiety and it's fate, so therefore I'm going to take this anxiety medication forever, um, and a lot of people have that attitude, and it's not because your approach to the medication, what you just described, sounds really healthy, but it's someone who has the time and effort and awareness, right? Back to awareness. Someone who has the awareness that their minds are powerful, and that this I have now have the opportunity to reverse some of the neural pathways that I've um, solidified over the years, these loops and cycles, and I'm really proud of you for doing that. So it's great to hear you say that.
Thank you, thank you. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it.
Well, I want to encourage anyone, if they're wondering how do I get my comfort zone bigger, and if I don't want to just take a medication, I encourage people to try to, at all costs, maybe trick yourself if you have to get yourself out of your comfort zone, or get someone to come with you to the Pilates class that you're scared to go to, or a creative writing class, or being vulnerable with the person. Just practice in the safe environment, and then kind of put your foot in the door. Don't just jump off a cliff. I'm not suggesting anyone go take a huge risk. If the practice will get you there, if because it's about the consistency. It's not about an overnight change, right? You didn't change overnight.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. And one thing is certain is that change is the nature of everything, right? Nothing is permanent.
Yep.
And I feel like oftentimes we get into this fixed mentality that like things are the way they are. I am the way I am. The circumstance is the way the circumstance is. And like you said earlier, we lose hope, or we kind of give into it. And as we do that, we are exercising the power of our powerful mind to make that choice.
Yeah.
Like our mind is so powerful, we have the power to feel powerless.
Yeah, the
Like,
power to feel powerless. This really ties in with the segment at the end. Um, I just wanted to throw in. It's not the most positive stuff, but I want to talk about some of the things when you're not ready to endure, when you're not ready to have, when you're not ready for the pain, right? Because things happen, like you said, changes happen. Some of these changes are like, I speak from experience on a few of these, so I'm going to bring them up. When that sick family member passes away, how ready are
mhm.
you for that? And I'm not saying to pre-grieve. I'm trying to say, are you ready? It might be as simple as getting on a plane and going to the funeral. That was once something that felt so overwhelming to me. I was so far deep in the hole that the thought, I would just felt overwhelmed. Like, oh, I can't. Like, you just wanted to escape. I wanted to escape. Or when you get sick and your body isn't ready physically, right? If you're not ready to, this is what happens when you're not ready to endure, when you're not ready to experience pain. So that's kind of going back to prevention. Like I got brain cancer, and I went through a lot of intense treatment and corticosteroids, and they did scan. It took 7 months to get me diagnosed. This was my body was in great condition, and that thank God, because I ended up gaining 70 pounds and my body got put through the ringer. I was sitting in a bed for months. If my body wasn't in good condition, I wouldn't have been ready for that. Uh, I want to bring up Kevin Hart for a second. He had a car accident a while back, and he claims that the doctors told him if his abdominal, his cores, if his core was not strong as it was, that because he broke his back partially, that he would have been
Oh
paralyzed for the
wow.
rest of his life. They were saying the fact that you were able to brace as well as you could in that one split second moment when you get in a car crash, because you know what, car crashes can happen, and if you're not ready physically, emotionally, imagine a fender bender. Like at the peak of my anxiety days, if I got in a small car accident with like an aggressive person, they get out of like I was just imagining, like if they get out of their car and they're like yelling at you, that's too intense. I would have to shut down. I wouldn't be able to
Right.
function. So I want to be ready for those moments, because they come at you and you don't see them coming, but we know they come eventually,
Right.
no matter how safe you try to be.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it's funny you brought that up. It reminded me of like I guess a personal practice that I've had like ever since I guess I realized like oh, we're all going to die. Everyone that I love is going to die and like all
Of
these things
course.
like I guess I like you said this like preemptively mourning thing. I feel like I've done that.
Me too.
Like there's a part of me that's like, oh yeah, like I am gonna lose my dad. I am gonna lose my mom. And
It's true.
ooh,
That does, and you know what? I kind of discouraged it, but the truth is, Olivia does that. My wife does that, and I do it too. And I did that for my grandfather. I have to say, and some people, if any audience members relate to this, please bring let us know, because the day my grandfather passed away, I did feel a release. It felt like I felt better, and at first I felt guilty. Like, why do I feel good about my? I was crying over him, and being sad about his condition for months. But when he did finally pass, there was it felt better. And then I chose, because our minds are powerful, I chose to believe he was in a better place, that he wasn't suffering, that he all the physical problems he was having and the dignity that he felt like he had lost in those last months, he had regained. And I'm not
hmm,
the most religious, but if believing that helps me come to terms with the pain, then I'm all for it.
right, right. The things that help us get through the pain, because we're gonna endure the pain
Yep,
one way or another.
we
So the
established
question
that.
is, how are we going to endure the pain, right?
Yeah.
What are the tools that we're going to use when the inevitable suffering happens,
So
right?
that's where indulging comes into play, right?
And that's one of the big ones, right? One of the big ones is like, oh, there's this emotion, there's this negative thing. Well, I could just avoid it, ignore it, suppress it. Any number of
Try.
things that are, trying to make it go away, right? It's one way of trying to deal with it,
Yeah.
right? There is this pain, there is this negative thing. I don't want it to be there, and you know, logically speaking, you'd be like, well, yeah, I'm gonna put it away, and a lot of times it's not conscious, but there is going to be some kind of mechanism that you
Yeah.
use. So I invite the audience to think about what are those mechanisms that you use when pain comes into your life, right?
Yeah, and we don't. I definitely encourage people to share some of the coping mechanisms, because I think there are some interesting ones that people could share and maybe help somebody else who's suffering. Because it's easy to say, okay, drinking is bad for you if you do it too much, and some people turn to drinking, for instance, when pain comes, when it's time to indulge. Some are better than others and you know what, you brought up that anxiety medication and how you acutely needed it. You took it as needed until you got to a
Yeah.
place
Well,
where you took
it was
control.
more for my depression, but yeah.
For your depression, well, it applies to both. It truly
Yeah.
is, and same for me, depression. Um, so just be aware, like, okay, well, maybe indulge into things, but if you find yourself chronically drinking alone at night, then you're in that hole again we were talking about. So I think when I bring up indulging, I want to talk about specifically self-control, and they're very closely linked. Your ability to control yourself, do you have it, first of all, right? And there's a Goldilocks when it comes to that. A Goldilocks meaning there's it's potentially it or you have the potential of having too little self-control, and you also have the potential of having too much self-control. Some people personalities differ widely. It might sound crazy to some people, like, what do you mean too much self-control? Or some people might be hearing me saying, what do you mean too little self-control? Like, some people deny themselves the indulgence so much because they know the dangers of having too little self-control. But when you deny yourself indulgence, and you, like you're talking about, suppressing your emotions, it can lead to burnout. It can perpetuate cycles of denial. Even you're denying yourself these indulgences, and those neurological pathways are dangerous itself. There's relationship indications of creating that suffering for yourself, almost like being a martyr. So and resentment can be harbored too when you're denying yourself the pleasures and you're surrounded by others who are enjoying them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
simply watching people enjoy themselves, and that can create resentment. So I definitely warn against too much self-control. What do you think happens to people with little self-control, though, Soul?
Little self-control, I think, is something that makes you be what some people might call like a drifter. You're just kind of letting the waves take you where they go.
Mm,
It's like you're not a hard set of like, I'm going here and this is why. It's more like, well, I'm going there, I guess, because that's where life is taking me. That's where, my past has taken me, or, we call it fate, right? Like,
yeah,
this is just how life is happening. And we don't take control of the sails, like, and you, because the wind is going to be blowing in whatever
yeah.
direction, but you can use the wind masterfully to get into to go to the direction you want to go.
I like that analogy. That's really good. I just put you on the spot asking you what you think, and I really liked what you had to say about it, because I had thoughts about when you have little self control. I'm thinking of addiction, of course, because that's where I'm coming from. When it comes to what you find, that thing that really helps you escape or avoid, and the one that works the best might not be the healthiest, but hopefully it is a healthy mechanism, and then you probably don't have a problem. But if it's a substance, like it could be marijuana or something like that, and I'm not even trying to or villainize it, because it's a tool for people. It's what you need to be aware of is your own brain, and what your brain is doing, what you're doing when you first wake up, and it's hopefully not
Mm-hmm.
spiking dopamine. And there's something called dopamine stacking. I'll finish the dopamine with dopamine stacking. Dopamine stacking is where you take the high dopamine activities and you do them at the same time or in sequence with each other. So in some
Oh.
crazy scenario where, well, I'm going to say the things that spike dopamine the most. You'd be doing something. You'd be doing cocaine. You'd be playing video games, eating your favorite food, and you would be probably touching yourself with adult content, stuff like that, all at the same time or in sequence.
Wow. Yeah.
First
Yeah.
thing in the morning too. Do that first thing in the morning. Do all those things that make you feel good first thing in the morning, and I guarantee you, by the end of the day, you're not. By the afternoon, you're not going to be excited to do anything hard. You're going to be sitting. It's going to be extremely difficult to do your job, to take care of the people and puppy that might depend on you. It and that's just a fact. So just be aware when you, and it's fun. I would encourage dopamine stacking in moderation if you have the self control, the Goldilocks, not too little, not too much. But I'm not saying people can't stack their favorite activities. I'm definitely not trying to discourage fun. Just be aware on a chronic level, long term, these patterns reinforce themselves. And you might be, and then you're in the hole. We're trying to stop people from being in that hole because once you're in the hole, I mean, physically, emotionally, neurologically speaking, it can be hard to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Prevention is, I would say, like the most important thing, right? Like at the end of the day, there's already people in the hole, and
Yeah.
we have tools and
Yeah.
stuff to get them out. But ideally, people can not even dip into the hole and notice the pattern of like, oh, I'm spiraling
Yes.
downward, have that awareness and be like, oh shoot, I'm dopamine stacking. Like something's going on in my life right now that's stressing me. Are there any healthier ways to cope with this? Or can I at least, reward myself at the end of the day instead of
Yes.
right in the morning? Because when you do it right in the morning, it like depletes your energy. It's like,
Yeah.
and yeah, like you got the reward at the beginning of the day, so what's left to do,
What's
like.
left to do? Yeah, I feel that way strongly.
And I've done that. Like I've been a
Yep.
victim of
Me
that.
too.
Like in the depression, in the isolation, I wake up not feeling great, so I'm like, you know what, I want to feel good right now. I deserve that.
Yeah.
And like.
Many people do deserve it, and like, I there's so many people. I anticipate people listening to us thinking these guys don't know what I'm going through. They don't know what it's like to be this or to do this or to be responsible for this. It just the truth is on a neurological level, we know what it's like to wake up and feel like we deserve that. There was a time, it's pathetic, I have to admit it, but I'm being vulnerable with the audience. I would wake up during college and I couldn't even get to class without smoking. And I just thought, smoking helps with my anxiety. And it helps with your anxiety in the moment. And then you reach a point where if you're not smoking, you're completely irritable and depressed or anxious. For
Yeah.
me, anxious. And smoking was the only thing that could get me not anxious to the point where I could just show up for class. Something that most people just got up and did became something I needed to reward myself before I could even show up. And then even then I would show up and I was in the at the bottom of that hole. I just couldn't get myself to pay attention in class. So that's a
Hmm.
scary place to be. It feels like you can't get out, and I just want to speak from experience that when it comes to things and addiction, I'm just qualifying addiction with the repetitive dopamine rewards and the neural pathways that are reinforced. So I'm not attacking anyone. I just want everyone to understand that there are ways if you search hard enough, if you believe in yourself. It sounds corny. Maybe I should stop talking. I'm not trying to be
No,
corny. I'm trying to be real.
I agree though. I agree with what you're saying wholeheartedly, because there's all these ways in which we avoid pain and reward ourselves, and yeah, in the moment, it does help us, but we have to be aware of the patterns that we're creating for ourselves and what it's doing to our subconscious, because that's the
Yeah.
thing that gets dangerous. Like doing it
Patterns.
once,
Yeah.
that's okay, and using plant medicines or whatever, I'd rather see it as like, I'm using this as a tool to help me, but never get to that point where you're like, I need this, because that's where I was too. Like when I was depressed, I
Yeah.
found plant medicine and it helped me get to class, right? And for a while it was almost like I needed it to function in a way. But once I
Exactly.
got out of it needing it to function, I had developed the hardware basically, or the repetitive habit of doing that in the morning, and to this day, like I still do that often.
Mm-hmm.
Like it, but like when there's like a conscious way to do it and an unconscious way to do it, and I go back and forth between the two,
Yeah. We both
right?
do. We're not perfect, as we've stated in a previous
Like,
podcast.
yeah, like everyone goes through, you have a little bit more conscious, a little bit more awareness, things are going
Yeah.
well, and then sometimes something happens, it brings you down, you go back to those old coping mechanisms, and then you realize what you're doing, and then you get back
Yep.
out of it. But it goes back and forth, right? So like in the time where I'm doing it very consciously, I was using marijuana to deepen my meditation,
Yeah.
and
Which it
I
can do.
wasn't, and it was great. It was a great balance. Like it was like my cup of coffee in the morning, and I would just take my little sip, my little hit,
Yeah.
go sit, go meditate, and like it would just set me up for the rest of the day. But then later, when like high anxiety or stressful times come, I would want a little bit more of that peacefulness that I felt throughout the day, and I would start doing it a little bit more and a little bit more, and
Yeah.
over time, like weeks would go by, and then it's like, oh my god, I've been smoking like all day long again. Like I was only doing it
Yeah.
in the morning.
Yeah.
Like how did I get to here? And then I have to consciously be like, okay, let's dial it back, because it's getting to the point where I feel like I need it. Like unconsciously, I'm like, oh, I need this to calm down.
Yeah.
Where all I really need to do is take a conscious breath and relax my body, because that's all I'm looking for from the plant medicine. Like it's gonna
Yeah.
give me that instant
Yep.
relief.
Which it sometimes you need to flip a switch if in a pinch. Time is of the essence. No one's got time is the asset we all want more of. I'm glad you brought up like taking one little hit and then meditating, because that takes some self control. That's a lot different. It's one thing. I think I've had people in my life talk about like trying to limit how many times a day you smoke, as if smoking is like a universal currency of like a certain amount. But like you might take one little puff, like I might take four bong rips. Like I might, what I'm saying?
Right.
There's a big difference like in the dopamine if you moderate one little hit, even throughout the day or whatever, versus if you're just trying to get out of your own mind. And that's kind of what I was trying to escape reality. And some people I will
Mm-hmm.
identify with that, and and
Yeah.
and and like you said about like it's the ebb and flow. And then in addiction therapy, which I've been to addiction therapy, both individual and group, and I've talked to a lot of people who struggled with addiction. There was a time we were talking about writing down all the things that are predictors of you relapsing. I hate to say the word relapsing, acting like it's we're all crazy, but it's just any predictors where you might fall back into those bad habits. And one of the ones that just should have been obvious was it sounds depressing, but it's good times, experiencing good times when everything is okay, and there's no and you've got all your ducks in a row. You did your schoolwork or you did your work. You're good in your relationship. You're financially whatever. All the things are doing good. That's actually a predictor for you potentially. Well, let me treat myself, and then as long as you stay aware, it should be fine. But in the setting I was in, which was full of people in addiction therapy, so these were addicts, including myself. Those were times where we would be more likely to overindulge, and we had a predisposition to overindulge.
That's
And
right.
how many times do you have to overindulge until you finally, and then like cause pain and suffering, that a surplus of suffering, until you realize it feels like a circle, right? But they encouraged us because it's a circle of behaviors. Everything gets
Mm-hmm.
good, then you go back. But they speak of it as an upward spiral. Like it might be a circle of behaviors, but you're on your way up to somewhere.
Right.
And even though the behaviors are cycling, you are becoming more aware, and the cycles become shorter. You don't you don't go in the hole for as long. You come out and you're better for longer. Ideally, up the spiral, you get better for longer and take more self control. And that's something that is hard to get to. I have a lot of respect for anyone who's gotten there, and I want to hear from anyone who's gotten there in their experience getting there.
Yeah, yeah, those stories are definitely inspiring, because it is so inviting. Like the the ego makes it so tempting,
Yeah.
because it's saying, experience this sweet, sweet nectar of anger right now. It's gonna feel so good.
Yeah.
And and if you believe it, you will feel good in that moment. But this reminds me of that, I think it was like a Buddhist saying, like when you hold anger for someone is like holding a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at them.
Mm.
But like
It's
as long
burning
as you're
you.
holding it, it's only hurting you. Like you're the
Wow.
one that is affected by it.
You're so right. That I love that quote. That is, I've never heard that. Yeah, we're all holding hot coals for. Well, not all of us. I've learned to let go of resentment, but it's so true. It's when you're holding that resentment or that anger towards somebody, you're waiting to throw the hot coal. You might have some leverage, like, oh, I dare this person to have the arrogance to act this way, and I'm going to remind them that they're actually wrong or they're not doing it right. And that's the hot coal in my head that I'm just waiting to insult some. Like, why am I waiting to defend myself or attack somebody when it's really just burning in my head, creating
Mm-hmm.
resentment in my head? Um, wow, that gives me a lot to think about. Uh,
Yeah. And man, I have something else that
yes,
I think is going to be really cool. Like we're talking about like avoiding pain, and in the moment we get to get that pleasure, right? That we feel like, we do deserve to experience happiness and pleasure,
yeah,
but we have to make sure it's the pleasure of the soul and not the pleasure of the ego or the material world,
I like that.
because the pleasure of the ego is in this moment, and what it does is it robs you of future happiness. A perfect example of this is drinking without moderation, right? Where you don't stay hydrated, you
Yeah,
drink so much. I've heard it being called like you are borrowing happiness
yeah, for the
from
next
the
day.
next day, right? Because the next day you feel so miserable in the morning, and
Yeah,
it's like
you pay
you
for it.
can you yeah, exactly, you're paying for it. So each one of those coping mechanisms, or um little invites of the ego of like feel good now, is it has a cost, right? And it usually comes further down the line. It might not be the next day, sometimes it might
Yeah.
be days, weeks, years.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, if you are having trouble making those changes, and you can continually keep giving in to the ego and thinking of the now, I want to invite people to think about like where it's going to lead at the end of the day, because like it might not seem like that big of a deal to do it one more time today,
Yeah.
but think about doing it one more time for the next year, one more time for the next 2, 3, 5 years. And do you really want to have the same problems that you're struggling with now 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Like when you look at it that way, I think it makes your ego be a little bit more scared, and it brings it into reality of what it's
Yeah.
doing, because you are robbing yourself of your own future fulfillment for this like very small transitory period where you're going to feel okay for a fraction of a second. You're going to forget your problems, forget yourself,
Yeah.
right? Which it's what we're trying to do. A lot
Which
of
is what
people, they
we
were trying
want.
to escape the
Yeah.
harsh reality.
That's what I. Yeah. Wow. You're. I mean, you put it into words very well because yeah, if you take away happiness from the next day and then you do it chronically, well, how many days of debt do you have? How much debt have you accrued over the years? And you blink and it's been 2 years and you've been in that same apartment, or you've been in that same friend group that also enables each other. And I'm not trying to turn people against their friends. It's just some relationships enable people to 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 feed that ego, and it
Hmm.
leads you down a dark path together. And I have that experience with a close friend, and we both were in a pretty bad spot. And it's amazing because me and that friend got out together, not together. We had to
Mm.
find our own ways, but we're both in a much better place. And we both talk about that time like we couldn't believe, and we were glad we had each other. However, we were the reason why we went as deep down the hole as we did is because we were both together doing it. So I like that you brought up the ego and people thinking in terms of ego. Just awareness yet again. Just we're just encouraging awareness. We're not telling people to kill your ego. Some people's egos maybe need to be humbled. Some people's egos need
Need
to
to be
be
strengthened.
engaged. Some people don't engage
Yeah.
with their egos at all. So we're talking to a wide audience here, and if you connect with our message, that's great. If you don't, we understand. On a population level, how am I supposed to tell every single human how there's, we're just trying to help the people that feel connected to these messages, and we're not attacking the ones that disagree, because honestly, like, we're not we're not like the end all be all. We don't know everything. So I'd really like to talk about the study that I wanted to ask you about. So I want to do our first installation of this segment of what the soul thing.
Let's do
Okay.
it.
Okay. Well, this is a study done in the 1950s by a man named, his name is Kurt Richter. I want to give him credit because, well, there's ethical concerns with this study. It's about rats, and he was a behavioral psychologist. He was a professor at Johns Hopkins, and what he did was a survival test with rats in water. And I hate to say it because this was abusive, and this kind of study is now illegal, but he drowned rats. And he took a group of rats and he just put them in a situation where they were drowning and they had no way to get out individually. And the average time of survival was 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Like, some died within 2 minutes. Some literally just gave up swimming. Rats are good at swimming, by the way. Some gave up swimming in 2 minutes and died and drowned. Some lasted 15 minutes and drowned. And then he did the same experiment again. Except for this time, right as they lost the will to keep swimming, he scooped them out of the water and he dried them off and he let them rest for a few hours. He did that with all of them, at whatever time they decided to stop swimming. He then placed them back in the water to let them drown. Do you know how long they swam? That second group. Do you want to guess how long that second group swam after being saved the first time?
Ooh. That's interesting.
Give it a guess.
It could go one or two ways.
Just
They're
guess.
either gonna give up immediately and hope that they get saved, or they're gonna try. No, I feel like maybe the first.
What do you think? Just give it a time.
Yeah, maybe that first one. Let's go with that one.
Well,
I don't know.
The average time swam up to 60 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
One of them swam for 70 hours. I mean, yeah, there's obviously a distribution. They all didn't make it 60 hours, but like most of them made it for. I mean, we're talking days. 60 hours is like multiple days of survival. Like, so there's something to be said about the first group that died within 15 minutes. Their mind is what gave out, right? Their bodies are obviously capable of swimming for 60 hours. So I want to hear your reflection on that study.
Wow, that was like my initial reaction was like, wow, they're gonna swim forever, but then I was like, oh, maybe not. But that's so interesting because it speaks to like the power of our will, right? Like the whole mind over matter, which again, what the mystics say, what every text that's trying to say, hey, here's a truth, they all say the universe is mental. It's mind first, then physicality, which is not a very popular thing in the scientific materialist world right now.
It's hard to quantify.
But there's plenty of scientists right now and a lot of physicists that, they agree that, like, we know that there is the hard problem of consciousness, which is, okay, like, where does consciousness arise from non-conscious matter?
Yeah.
That is called the hard problem of consciousness because we have no idea where things go from being unconscious to conscious. So since we don't know, it's like, well, let's not assume a materialist perspective, which is what people tend to do. But there's people out there that are saying, well, let's come at it from the other side. What if everything is mental first and then it gets derived? And there are mathematical and physical theories that are pretty consistent. And I think, the world would benefit from looking at this other paradigm because from personal experience, it makes a lot of sense. And I've heard it not just from mystics, but also from, the really successful rich people. When I was like, okay, I want to be successful, I want to get my mind state straight. Like, what are they saying? Well, they're saying the same thing. Everything is created twice, first in thought and then in form. You have to consciously decide what it is that you want, and then you can create it. Like you're given that. So here in this specific example, it shows you how like once you have like that determination or that knowledge that you are going to be saved, that things will be okay at the end, then it gives them that tenacity of like, I am not going to stop, right? Like
Yeah.
I am an unstoppable force.
Well, when you have the belief, using
The
your
belief.
mind being powerful, having hope, having even debatably faith. I'm not saying those rats had faith necessarily, but what I'm trying to say is they had some kind of hope. There's some testament to resiliency. They definitely pushed their body to the max, whereas the first group of rats did not push their body to the max. You know, it reminded me just when I got sick with brain cancer. I'm gonna have to talk about it again. One day I'll give my full story. It's just there were plenty of times I could have chosen it's over, and I just wanted to give up. Like there is something to be said about your mental attitude, and not that you can manifest whatever you want. And you know what? Some would say those rats swam for 60 hours. They suffered more. Why, you know, I'd rather swim for 15 or 2 minutes and die if I'm gonna swim for 60 hours anyway and die. However, the ones that swim for 60 hours had the belief, and theoretically, when you extrapolate it, because this is just in theory, because we're talking about rats, you know, if you're willing to swim the 60 hours, you're more likely to get scooped up by something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get scooped, you know, if you don't want to get scooped, that's a problem. I don't know. I could fix, but I encourage anyone to do their own research because we shouldn't be your primary source. Like if we've sparked something inside you that made you curious, we're hoping to find curiosity in our audience. Then we encourage you to look into that yourself. You know, they ban that kind of study, you know, because we're drowning rodents. But they actually do still use this experiment for um, antidepressants to measure antidepressants. And what they measure is how long a rat will swim until they put their head under the water, basically. Like how long do they keep their head up breathing until they give up? And then they scoop the rats out anyway. But that they use that to measure efficacy of experimental antidepressants. Because when you put a rodent on antidepressant, they swim for longer. The interval of time is longer, and
Mm.
that's just an animal level study. And obviously we're not rodents, but there's something to be said about that study.
Yeah, yeah, we're still animals. We still have that
Yeah,
wiring that's very similar. And I like that you brought something up about the, relatively, you might say that they experienced more suffering having to
yeah,
swim for longer. And that brings up something that I wanted to mention, which is the subjectivity of pleasure and pain. Because to one person, something could be um, really uncomfortable, right? Not pleasurable, versus someone else can find that very
the same thing.
discomfort exhilarating and
Mm,
enjoyable.
yeah,
Like, for example, running a marathon. A
yeah,
lot of people would say that sucks and I never want to do that. Why would you put yourself through all that pain?
yeah,
But the other people, they love that high and being able to do something that's difficult, and the discipline that requires for you to train your
discipline.
body and mind to to basically, swim for 60 hours, to run for however
Yeah,
many miles straight. Like it's definitely a mind game over the physical. And like the amazing things that humans can do when they set their minds to something is beyond
yeah,
me. Like
yeah.
I don't know where the limit is for what we can do.
Yeah, if you're willing to swim the 60 hours, I'm willing to bet you are able and capable of doing some amazing things. And I want to see people do that. Like I know some people who are willing to swim the 60 hours, but they don't know where to go. And when you mention discipline, I think that's going to be one of the tools in the tool belt that we're going to encourage people here today um, to try to practice. Because you talked about running that marathon. Some people, it's hell. Like, I think about lifting weights. Some people, the idea of lifting weights and feeling in pain is hard or uncomfortable, and there's nothing that drives them to want to do it. If you can trick your brain into enjoying it, to thriving off of it, to feel that blood flow on a physical level, which, to be fair, just to say, if you're running a marathon, gets blood flow is boosted into your brain. Like your brain gets more blood. More blood means more nutrients, more opportunities for it to think, more cognition. Our brains are computers, and we need energy to fuel it. So we're going to talk about that in our physical health episode, of course. But I want to end this episode talking about discipline and just how it can be valuable and how it's relevant to everything we were saying. If you were able to practice discipline, sometimes I used to think of the word discipline as like someone disciplining a kid, right? Like meaning you're like hitting them or you're punishing them, and I'm disciplining them. But that's not really an accurate definition of discipline. I want to hear what you have to say about how you characterize what discipline is specifically.
Right. All right. I really loved this when I heard it a few years back, and it said, "Discipline is the highest form of self-love." And I'll say it again, discipline is the highest form of self-love. And the reason that I love this is because it really makes you understand what we were talking about earlier, right? There is that that's sensation of like, oh, I'm getting the thing that I want right now, right? The ego giving you like, oh yeah, just leave the unhappy relationship, procrastinate your important project, whatever it may be, uh, you know, talk yourself out of your dreams and ambitions. Feel good in the moment. What that is doing is robbing you of the real growth, the real spiritual fulfillment that you can attain in this life. And discipline is the way that you are saying, you know what? I choose for myself, like the highest possible future. Like I'm saying, I want what's best for future me.
Yeah.
I want to set myself up for success. 10 years from now, I want to be doing X, Y, and Z, feeling X, Y, and Z. And the only way to get to that is by, you know, saying that's the point that I want to be. I'm going to set my sails, and it doesn't matter which
Set your
direction the wind is
sails.
blowing.
Yeah.
That's the direction I'm heading in, right?
Mm.
So like you're choosing the things that are going to bring you the most joy in your life, and you're saying I am going to commit myself to do this because my happiness is worth that to me. Whenever you're not doing that, you're basically giving up on those dreams. You're saying no, it's too hard. I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Like all the ego comes in to say that you can't really get to that. Forget it. Just feed me. Keep things the way that they are,
Yeah,
right?
right. I mean,
That
the delayed gratification is what I'm hearing you talk about. When you're talking about zooming out, let's just talk about zooming out, thinking long term. These are things that are hard, things that I didn't do when I was a kid. Many people don't do when they're young, and and I think if you zoom out and you think long term, you're at least more likely to feel these experience these growths, feel that fulfillment, find what you're looking for. And I guarantee you, if you're bored in the process, you won't stay bored. Okay? I will, and I don't want to go off on another tangent, but I am. The fact is, if you start denying yourself some of those instant gratifications, the little things are going to be entertaining. They're going to be like just petting your like a good metric I use is when you're petting your cat. Like you see my cat in the background. Sometimes it's like if I'm in that hole, just instant gratification. Like I'm not giving my cat the attention it deserves, or like I'm not showing love to my cat. But then when I'm like trying to like detox, essentially, one like petting my cat, I'm enjoying it. Like I'm like, oh, I do love you. Why was I not why was I blinded
mm-hmm.
by my own drives and selfishness? And so I think you spoke some really wise words. I think you said it the best way I could have put it. Doesn't matter what direction the wind is blowing. I'm pointing my sails in this direction because I know that's where I want to be in the end. And it might not happen overnight or it might not happen instantly. But
Yeah.
you really put it well.
Yeah, and at the end, since we're talking about the ways that we meet pain, um, I heard this once that said like there's there's pains that you can't avoid, and you have to choose between the two, right? There's the pain of discipline, and there's the pain of regret.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
It's hard to compare, but that's a choice. Yeah, you can choose the pain of discipline. We're not going full David Goggins on you guys. It's just you can choose the pain of discipline over the pain of regret. As someone who suffered that, who is very internal, can eat away at you. It can really every minute you spend regretting is a minute you could be spending doing literally anything else, creating, inspiring,
right.
caring,
Yeah.
loving.
Yeah. And like I just turned 30 this year, and that kind of put things into a longer term uh a perspective that's more that's wider. You know, I'm thinking about what's going to be happening long term versus in my 20s I really was living more in the moment and not really planning 10 years ahead. Like I guess I was starting to learn that I should be thinking
Yeah.
that way, but it still felt so far away and like so removed. So
Mm.
like looking back now, I have those feelings of regret, and I'm like, damn, I'm so young, and I still feel like
Mm.
I wasted a lot of time in my 20s. And like, I'm not gonna sit here and feel bad about that. I'm gonna learn from that and say, you know what, I'm gonna do something different this decade, and
Yeah.
I'm not gonna waste as much time in these things
And
that rob me of my energy and my focus.
the truth is, you also had a lot of valuable experiences. Ones that you'll never
Yeah.
forget. Ones it's not like it was waste
No,
living in
I
the moment.
needed those experiences
Yeah, a
to
lot of people
be as
do.
wise as I am now.
So yeah, so we're not exactly you gain. So there is a balance. We're not telling people to completely just think because I taught an SAT prep class actually. I believe it or not, I taught SAT prep to a bunch of high schoolers, a class of 30 kids. I have a degree in statistics. I mean, I did very good on the SAT. It's just these kids, the average kid who's because it was after school, it was dark outside. They're sitting in their high school. I'm like thinking that kind of sucks that these high schoolers are like coming to after school studying for SAT prep, and most of them had really good grades. They were really just trying to get a perfect score on the math SAT. It's kind of dystopian, like because their parents are paying a lot of money for them to do it. Anyway, at the very end of the class, I had some parting words with them, and it just came to me at the last, and I just encouraged them to I wasn't telling them not to study. I just told them not to stay in their dorm room and do nothing. I encouraged them to explore the world around them safely because that
Okay.
those kids are the ones who are going to sit in the library. I know a couple guys who just sat in the library and studied and ate their food and had a couple friends but didn't really explore the people, the activities, the opportunities that college offered them. And
Mm-hmm.
so I encouraged those kids, that was the first time a lot of those kids really recognized my words. They were like nodding, like wow, because they weren't every adult in their life is saying you got to go to college, you got to get perfect grades, you got to be good, and you better not party, you better not do these fun things, you better not. And the truth is, it's because it's up to the student themselves, the young person themselves, to decide how much they're going to indulge, how much they're going to endure. And so we're just encouraging that healthy balance and the awareness of that. So that's our main message here today. And we're really glad if you kept listening this whole conversation. Thank you very much. And please let us know in the comments where we missed anything, where we can improve, and we will see you for the next episode.
Much love, everyone.
Bye.